Do the Clippers need a backup center? We are going to be talking about Moses Brown and Moussa Diabate and where they fit in. Do they need to go out and get another one? I will be joined by my first guest on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day. I am your host, Darian Vaziri, 18 years, a diehard Clipper fan, and also have my own podcast and YouTube channel called Dime Dropper. For today's episode, I told you guys we were going to be having a guest on soon. He formerly hosted Locked On Badgers. He is one of my good friends, born and raised in LA. We've gone to many a great Clipper playoff game and regular season games together. And he currently is the public address announcer for the Pepperdine Waves, as well as writes for USA Today for the Badgers Wire, and has some knowledge on, well, obviously the NBA, but also college basketball. My good friend Asher Lowe, also a Clipper fan. Ash, thanks for joining us to talk about some young big men today.
Yeah, great to be your first guest here on Locked On Clippers. Good to be back on the Locked On Podcast Network. Love this network, and I think they made an awesome choice hiring you, knowing you for as long as I have, hiring you to run this Locked On Clippers podcast. They could not have done a better job with the hiring process. So I'm glad that you're part of the network, and we have real super fans in here to talk Clipper basketball.
Appreciate it, of course. And so I guess let's get straight into it. One of the big questions about this Clipper team for this upcoming season is the loss of Isaiah Hartenstein, meaning that there's no true backup center for Zoo right now. I guess before we get into Moses Brown and Moussa Diabate, I want to ask you, do you think the Clippers made the right decision of letting Isaiah Hartenstein walk and getting John Wall instead?
If you give me one or the other, I think that you have to be excited about taking John Wall in that scenario. But obviously, in an ideal world, I would have loved to have both on the Clippers, because Hartenstein provided something that the guys we're talking about today, Moses Brown, Moussa Diabate, neither one of them provide. He's a very unique player in today's day and age. He's kind of like a passing hub, big, not really a scorer outside of that floater that is just automatic.
Yeah, that one-handed push shot was just ridiculous.
It's like he's a one-dimensional scorer, but that kind of one dimension is something that nobody else really has right now in the NBA at that level, I feel like. I mean, I can't really think of many bigs that have that push shot.
Steven Adams for a little bit had a nice one.
Yeah, he did. It's a pretty unique shot, though, in today's day and age. And he provided that passing that is also unique for a guy of his size, of course. It's probably his best trait on either end of the floor, in my opinion, was his passing last year. Played some huge minutes for this team. And the Knicks, man, what a great pickup for them. He's the kind of guy, though, like I could say he's a perfect fit for the Knicks. I think he's a perfect fit for 30 NBA teams. I think he's a useful NBA player. No matter where he is. So, and it's really important to have role players like that. They can just kind of seamlessly transition into any situation. That's what a role player is all about, right?
Yeah.
Can help stars win in any situation. And so, he was an amazing Clipper last year, and a guy that I think that the fans quickly fell in love with for obvious reasons, right? Like the offensive rebounds, the push shots, the passing, a guy that never took a night off when he was on the floor, a guy that always played at 110% last season during the regular season, especially when the Clippers were so depleted with injuries. So definitely disappointing to see him go. But yeah, I mean, can't complain about John Wall. Workout video hype. It's workout video hype season. It's Rico Hines UCLA runs hype season. And John Wall has Clipper fans all wrapped up in the workout video hype. I don't really play those games very often, but I will admit he looked pretty good.
Yeah. So Moses Brown and Moussa Diabate, the two centers that the Clippers have right now. I guess we'll start with Moses Brown. He came to the league in 2019 from UCLA, only played 9 games in the COVID season for the Portland Trailblazers. And then in 2020, 2021, 43 games for the Oklahoma City Thunder, 32 starts, averaged 8 points and 9 rebounds. So not bad there. And then last season was with the Dallas Mavericks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. He played 40 games in total, and with Cleveland, he averaged 6.4 points. I saw he was in the Rico Hines workout videos, and I saw some good things, like how, first of all, how big he looked and seemed decent under the basket, but he seemed, and this is just me looking at the workout videos, like at the NBA level in a full speed game, he could be a little slow. Didn't seem like more, he seemed like more of a catch the ball underneath the basket, go up strong kind of guy, as opposed to like a lob threat. He had to bring everything down in the clips that they were showing. And I don't know how he can defend at the NBA level against good players as of now. But have you seen any of him play? I didn't really get to watch him play with those teams. I mean, OKC, Cleveland, Dallas, those weren't teams that the Clippers got involved with too much or played big games last year. I mean, Cleveland did, but at that point, I don't think he was really involved.
Yeah, Moses, first of all, he was on a pretty dysfunctional UCLA team for UCLA team standards. That was a team that went 9-9 in the Pac-12 in 2018-19, seventh in the conference, which for UCLA standards, as we know, that's not good enough. The biggest highlight of Moses Brown's UCLA career is that Jalen Hands video where Jalen lifts his head up that goes viral every so often. Have you seen that video? That's a classic.
I don't think so.
On the road at Oregon. It's a really cool moment. Jalen Hands, Moses is all down and sad because of a play that just happened, and Jalen Hands comes over and lifts his head up. It's a really cool.
I think I may have seen it.
Yeah. That thing goes around on NBA Twitter all the time. But outside of a dysfunctional UCLA season and a season where he really didn't move me much in terms of prospecthood, you're right, though. I think it starts with his athleticism, because as a guy that doesn't really project as a shooter in any way, right, doesn't really give you a great offensive passing threat like a Hartenstein does. So how does he play offense, right? Probably above the rim, probably as a roll threat and a play finisher. He's not bad as a touch guy, I don't think, but the level of athleticism limits him sometimes as that play finisher, because he's not a great second jump guy, right? He's not he's not a bad offensive rebounder, but he's not a good enough offensive rebounder to, I think, make up for the lack of other things he has in his offensive toolkit. And his conditioning was a big problem coming into the NBA. It's gotten better, but I still don't think he is at a high enough level of condition to make a massive impact this year for the Clippers, because that was my biggest question coming in, was can he stay on the floor for a long time? We didn't see it much at UCLA, but like I said, that was a weird year. But yeah, he's big. He's 7'1", right? He's massive. But does the athleticism catch up to him in the NBA? I think it already has for a couple of years. And that OKC team, we got to take that team with a grain of salt, right? He started 30-plus games for an NBA team, but let's put NBA team in air quotes when we're talking about that OKC team. That's a rebuilding team and a team that won 22 games that year. So a team that was not trying to win in any way, was giving him a bunch of minutes just to develop and get his conditioning right.
You know what's interesting about that OKC team? I was looking back at some things from the 2021 season last year, or a couple weeks ago, and that OKC team was 17-22 at one point, and then they ended the season 5 and
Well, I think it was Shea. Shea was playing and
Al Horford.
Well
and Al Horford was playing.
Horford was playing well at the beginning of the year. Dort was playing pretty well that year at the beginning of the year, and then they just kind of.
I think SGA got hurt. Remember? Didn't SGA get hurt?
Yeah, Shea played 35 games that year. He and then playing. And at a certain point, they just said, "Well, why would you play? Yeah. What is the point of having you play right now?" So, yeah, I remember them blowing a lot of games. I remember them being up by 10, 12 in fourth quarters against good teams that year. Even when they were 17-22, games in the beginning of the year where they could have closed out teams and they just didn't. They were up by 12 with 6 minutes left, or young team stuff that happens a lot in the NBA.
Let's quickly go over Moussa though. So from what I've heard, and I kind of tend to agree, Moses Brown probably won't be the answer to the backup big thing. But Moussa Diabate, 6'10", played 1 year in college at Michigan. He's from France, moved to Florida for high school. Obviously, you being around Wisconsin sports, probably got to see a lot more of him. Yep. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on him. He was in the open runs as well and looked more lanky, athletic, even though he's a little bit, at least for traditional centers, maybe a little bit on the undersized side at 6'10", but he's got long arms and he looked more agile, athletic. Do you think he could break into that rotation as the Hartenstein replacement?
I do. During the regular season, I really do. So there's a lot to like about Moussa. There's a lot that's raw there. There's a lot that is undeveloped and underdeveloped about his game, especially offensively. But there's a ton of physical stuff to like here. He had plays at Michigan where he would get rebounds, take 3 dribbles, and throw it down. He would go coast to coast himself. There were a couple of those plays that I remember very clearly where I was just a wow athlete moment. Oh my goodness. And there's the flip side of that, right? Where at 6'10", you kind of want him in this NBA to be able to shoot a little bit, to be able to stretch an even bigger big away from the basket a little bit. He can't do it yet. 8 for 31 last year on jumpers, which is not only a tiny sample size, he didn't shoot well on that tiny sample size at Michigan. It was, a 3 here, 3 there, but barely projects as a shooter right now, and a long way to go in that department at basically all levels, mid, 3, like it doesn't matter. He's got a long way to go as a shooter. But as a rebounder, as a rim protector, those were things we saw at IMG. Those were things we saw in EYBL for him in high school, before college. And those things translated to college. I thought there were really good moments of him in rim protection. I talk about second jumps. Like, he's a great second jump guy. He's a really good play finisher above the rim. Super athletic. Very, very mobile for a guy that projects to play probably the 5 this year. And yeah, I think that there's a lot more to like about his upside than Moses Brown's upside, mainly because of just his athletic makeup. It's a lot of things that, like his cons, right? His pros are things that not a lot of guys come in with, and things that sometimes you can't teach. His cons are things that you see guys, when they get to the NBA, get a lot better at, whether it's play finishing with touch, whether it's mid-range jumpers, whether it's being able to all of a sudden in year 3 or 4 stretch out and start hitting threes to a rate where you can take some of them finally. Whether it's intelligence on the defensive end, things that I think that he can get better at are things that I've seen other NBA players and things that we've seen prospects actually improve upon, versus Moses' stuff is a little bit more, his body's kind of limiting him in the way he moves.
Yeah. And it seems like from how you're talking, he can be a lob threat, and it seems like if you're Ty Lue, you're putting him in that first game against the Lakers.
Hey, why the heck not? Give him 12 minutes in that game. I don't know. Why not? Right. And can I just say one other thing I want to say about this topic, right?
Okay, go for it.
How cool is it? You're a guy that will appreciate this more than maybe anybody, and your listeners will too. How cool is it that we're doing a whole goddamn episode on the major problem with the Clippers roster being a backup big that will probably play like 12 minutes a game come playoff time, and they actually have a decent option they just drafted on the roster, in my opinion. That's our big roster question right now, because that's how freaking good, insanely good, great this roster is right now.
Damn
that's
right.
That's what we're talking about, right?
And if the Clippers want to go out and strengthen, there are a couple bigs on the market. Are any of them good enough or better potentially?
Let's make this a game. How about you give me a name and I'll say just a quick yes or no.
Oh, I will. But before that game is played, I should say, before that game is played,
what a tease.
Stay tight. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the potential bigs on the free agent tracker that the Clippers could potentially go out and sign. So, I woke up the other day and I didn't want something light, didn't want something heavy. And you know what I really needed more than anything? Cookie dough chunk puffs from Built Bar. They have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate, so they're going to taste good. It won't be too heavy, won't be too light, exactly what you're looking for to start your day, or even eat it after a workout. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family, but make sure you hide them from your kids because they're so good that they could go into the pantry and snag them. What's great about Built is that all their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you, and that is Built Bar. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff. Go to Built.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON15 and get 15% off your order. That's LOCKEDON15. All right. So here we go. The big question with the Clippers roster, as you alluded to earlier, it's great to have these small of problems. Shout out to Jerry West, Lawrence Frank, Michael Winger for assembling the roster. And also, I just dropped the Jerry West sit down that I've referenced multiple times in these first couple of episodes that I've done Locked On, where he talked about the roster, some things that we've talked about in terms of the wings on the roster, John Wall's impact. Check that out on my Dime Dropper YouTube channel. And if you also want to, if you can't find it on Dime Dropper YouTube or don't know how to get there, go to the Locked On Clippers Twitter account and you'll see that I retweeted it there and you'll find the link there. But now we're going to talk about the potential backup bigs the Clippers can go get. So I'm going to give you some names, rapid fire, yes or no. And I want you guys in the comments on the YouTube channel to give me feedback. Are any of these guys options? Are any of these? Do you want to see the Clippers sign any of these guys? All right, you ready, Ash?
I'm ready.
All right. 37-year-old LaMarcus Aldridge.
Next.
All right. I see Moses Brown there, but he's already been signed. How about a former Clipper? DeMarcus Cousins, one of your personal favorites.
If we somehow figure out a way to put him in a time machine, I would absolutely love it if we're going back to the future with him. But as it currently stands, I'm going to have to say no, but I love DeMarcus, as you know.
I think even if DeMarcus Cousins can't help the Clippers right now, he could definitely help other teams as a backup big. Because with Denver, you saw in the playoffs, he actually played pretty well. He gave him some decent minutes.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know how much is left in the tank on his body, but I'll always love DeMarcus Cousins. I think he's actually a really good guy to bring in when you have a young roster. And I know like there were all like the media stories about him when he was younger in Sacramento about being this, being that. I actually think he's the kind of guy, from hearing him talk recently, from hearing things about him, he's the kind of guy who actually want in my locker room with a young roster right now.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, he's definitely seemed like he's matured, and I think everybody on the Clipper team liked him, and he spoke really glowingly about Ty Lue when the Clippers got John Wall and how John's in a great situation with a great organization. So it seems like even though the Clippers didn't re-sign him last season, doesn't have any sour grapes or anything. All right, so you don't want to go with Boogie. How about Ed Davis, 33 years old?
Man, I haven't seen him play in a minute.
Yeah,
now that I'm thinking.
How about Ennis
Freedom? A lot of
Freedom?
injury issues for him. I mean, there was a time where he was a pretty useful bench player, but and at least he, unlike the other two, he's a guy that I don't know. Listen, I don't know what kind of shape he's in right now, but at least he's not a guy where you're like, okay, the offense I can get something from you, and the defense I can get literally nothing.
Yeah.
So if I had those three options, I'd probably take Ed Davis, I guess.
What about Ennis Freedom?
No comment. Not even going to give him an X. No comment.
What about former Clipper? I'm not going to say his nickname on the show, but he won the Sixth Man of the Year in 2020. Recently had some legal troubles.
No.
All right. I agree.
Nope. We're talking about defense. Remember?
Right. So that's the main thing you're looking at, right? Is you want to
the problem with the names you've given me, right, is that these are guys that and it's not like you could have given me better names. There aren't that many great ones out there, right? But at least with a Moussa, first of all, you're talking about a guy who's 20, right? You're talking about a guy who I think is ahead of like with the two ends of the floor, right? I think he's ahead of himself defensively than where he is offensively right now. He's better on that end right now. And I see where he can improve offensively. I think it's possible down the road. He's a guy that I think is going to come and just run around out there, right? And like make some mistakes, but at least give you 120% energy. And like I said, he's 20. He's not 35 and had 3 bad injuries. And, I mean, like, can these guys defend in the pick and roll? Of the names you gave me, I haven't heard one that I know can.
How about Dwight Howard? He looked a little washed last season with the Lakers.
I mean, same issue, right? Like pretty similar issue, except
he's better in the pick and roll, though, I'd say, than the guys we just named.
Right. It's just it's slim pickings out there. Greg
Monroe, the Goose.
I mean, listen, Greg Monroe had some decent moments last year. I had to do the Capital City Go-Go, the Wizards affiliate sheets, and he was putting up some numbers down there in Capital City. He had some 20 and 10 games in the G League last year.
So, but I'm hearing takers here.
No.
Okay, and then last but not least, but maybe he is least. Actually, 2 of them. Former Charlotte Hornet Cody Zeller.
I mean, that's probably the best name you've given me so far.
Because the other ones are Tristan Thompson and Hassan Whiteside.
Tristan, I mean, actually, Tristan, I don't know. I haven't seen him play enough recently. But Hassan's a no for me. But Tristan and Cody are probably the 2 most interesting names you named. With Cody Zeller, you know exactly what you're getting, right? Like not going to be out of himself, going to completely stick to what he's supposed to do. He's not like a game-changing player in any way on either end, really. But he's solid enough on both where I think that, I mean, like, listen, he was the starting center for a while with a Charlotte team that was competitive. So I think I see the vision there, I guess. But I'm still more excited about giving a guy like Moussa minutes than I am about bringing on a Cody Zeller and stunting some of that Moussa development time.
So it seems like, in conclusion, Clippers shouldn't really go out and get anyone. These guys aren't.
I don't think
these
so.
guys are not needle movers. These guys are not reliable. It seems for what the Clippers need.
They're not, and the roster is just too good. Where you sometimes obviously aren't going to be playing a 5. I think we're going to see that.
Hold that thought.
This year.
So coming up, we're going to talk about how much this conversation even really matters. How much are the Clippers even going to play a traditional 5 outside of Ivica Zubac? What games and what teams that the Clippers play will need Ivica Zubac to play 30-plus minutes, and which ones will be the games where he barely plays at all past the first quarter? We're going to talk about that coming up. So to end off, we're going to be talking about how much the Clippers even need to talk about this backup center conversation. I've alluded to many times that Ty Lue is going to really lean into the small ball lineups that we saw work very successfully at times for the Clippers with guys like Rocco, Robert Covington, Nico Batum at the 5. So let me ask you, Ash, how much do you think it's even going to really matter throughout the regular season outside of Zoo? Do you think it's 9 minutes or 10 minutes? Do the Clippers even need a backup center at the end?
No. In fact, I don't know if they need a Zoo on this roster. I really don't.
Zoo?
To me, yeah. And listen, I love Zoo. I think he's a really, really good player at what he does. I don't know if, and listen, it's been fun to watch, by the way. Have you watched any of Eurobasket or seen
I was going to ask you about that. I plan on it.
Yeah,
but
so Eurobasket's
been. He looks a little slimmer
out there. He does. He looks really good right now for that Croatian national team. And Eurobasket, by the way, just a stacked tournament. If you're a fan of basketball, which you probably are listening to this podcast, I cannot recommend heavily enough going to check out the Croatian team, watching, Greece play, watching Slovenia play with Luka, watching even a team like
France?
Bosnia went and beat Slovenia yesterday. Hungary beat France yesterday, or kept it close at least. Israel got off to a 2-0 start. Deni Avdija been playing great for the Israeli national team. It's been a lot of fun. I mean, Jokic, on Serbia right now, just absolutely killing. It's been an amazing tournament to watch. Up and down this tournament, it's just stacked. So definitely go check out Zoo playing for Croatia. Back to the Clippers, though. I think that this roster has so many damn good wings, so many people that are in that 6'6" to 6'9" area, 6'5" to 6'9" area, because that lets us include Terrence Mann and Luke Kennard. But I don't know about Luke Kennard.
Terrence Mann,
he's listed at 6'5".
Oh.
I don't know if he is, but so the amount of great wings on this roster, the amount of small ball 5 we've seen them play in the past that has been successful against certain teams. I think actually when the rubber hits the road and we're talking NBA playoff time, I think we're going to see less and less and less of Zoo. There might be a series where he's really, really needed against somebody like, I don't know, maybe a DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think Zoo, the Clippers missed him big time when he got injured in that.
I agree.
Series. Even though Game 5, the Clippers went into Phoenix and won without him, you could see the way he was taking away that right elbow jump shot for Chris Paul in the pick and roll and drop coverage was amazing. And then he was even able to switch on him because Chris doesn't have that same burst he used to anymore. So he settles for a lot of those threes. And Zub did a great job putting his hand up, not fouling. He was awesome. But as you're saying though, in the previous series against Utah and Dallas, Luka and
Donovan, the game we were at, aka the greatest Clipper game of all time, is a really good example of how I think the Clippers might find themselves playing against a lot of different playoff opponents. That Game 6 against Utah that we were at together, and the Clippers went small and ran Utah off the floor in that second half and went to the Western Conference Finals because of it. So I think it's an interesting development to have. It's an interesting dilemma to have, and it's a good problem to have. Once again, right? Like, you're going to have Zoo on the roster. He can come in and play when needed. He's not going to be a guy that's playing 25, 30 minutes every game, especially in the playoffs. In the regular season, he might do that a lot, to be honest.
Yeah. So let me ask you this though: you said the Clippers not need Zoo
doing it a lot in the playoffs.
I was saying you're saying though.
I don't think they do.
So you think the Clippers should go through the whole regular season without a starting center?
I do.
That's the 2020. That's the 2020 Houston Rockets model, though. You need some big.
But the thing with the Rockets model is they were extremely heliocentric offensively. This Clipper team would not be.
I agree.
Because when you go small, right, with a bunch of wings, and small, everybody's going to be above 6'5", 6'6". It's all in that range except for John Wall and Reggie Jackson, right? So you might have one guy who's not in that range on the floor at a time. You're not going to play those guys together. I'd be shocked if we see some Wall-Reggie lineups at all, honestly, all year outside of maybe a couple minutes here in the regular season, a couple minutes there. When a big game comes, we're not going to see them play together. So we're talking about maybe one guy below 6'5", the rest of them being bigger wings. And you're talking about an offense that, unlike the Rockets offense, isn't predictable, isn't heliocentric, isn't just everybody else stands and watches. It's a bunch of guys moving together, a bunch of different threats, right? Like 2 or 3 creators at the same time on the floor. And to me, that 2 or 3 creators at the same time on the floor, when you're putting a traditional 5 in that setting defensively, is even worse than putting him in a heliocentric small ball lineup defensively. Does that make sense? Like, your opponent is playing a traditional 4, traditional 5, and now they're having to guard 5 dudes that can all to some level create. Because, like, listen, can Amir Coffey create? He can. Can Batum create? Enough to be a bit of a problem off the dribble, off the catch, right? Yeah. A little bit here or there. Can Terrence Mann create? More than a lot of, like, 7th or 8th best players on teams in the NBA can. He sure as heck can, right? So many. Norman Powell, can he create? Yes, he can, especially when you're attacking closeouts that you're inevitably going to get because a different guy creates an advantage for you. So when you have all these guys working, harmoniously together and not just kind of standing and watching one high pick and roll happen, I think it's a lot more dangerous. And I think it's even more dangerous when you take that traditional 5 off the floor offensively. Defensively, we can argue about it a little bit. I think there's more gray area there. But offensively, I think it's a no-brainer to me. This team is better with Zoo off the floor when it comes to playoff series and big games. And I think we'll see them go to that a lot.
I don't disagree with that. It's mainly the couple of things without having a traditional center and what Zoo does well. He's great in the pick and roll with Kawhi and just having a big roller. You know what I mean? Like, that's
very good screener. Very good
screener and having a big roll. Like, if Robert Covington sets a screen for the pick and pop, that's decent. But having something going to the basket is nice with Zoo. And then obviously the rim protection. Now, obviously, if you switch everything, the rim protection is supposed to be to prevent guys from getting by you. But he has done a good job protecting the rim these last couple of years. I think he's very underrated in that respect. And the Clippers have been top 10 in defensive rating now. I don't think they were in 2021, but 8th last season. And I think Zoo was a huge part of that. So I like to have at least one big, especially what happens when the Clippers do actually play big, like a good one, like a Jokic, Ayton. That's where you're going to need a Zoo. Because I don't think Rocco, Nico, Batum, they can try their best, but it's much easier against a Rudy Gobert, who's not as skilled.
We've already saw one of the backup centers options that you listed try to guard a Jokic in the playoffs, and we're not going to mention his name, but he did try, and he failed.
And Zubats was obviously he was doing okay. I mean, obviously the net rating and everything looks really great in that bubble series against them.
Yeah, but then we took him off of him for I don't know why. You tell me. Tell me.
Well, so I think Zubats we know for a fact is going to be on the roster. He's going to play a pretty big part. I guess the final question is, so we've agreed that the Clippers probably shouldn't go after any of those guys on the free agency tracker or whatever. Do you even think Moussa Diabate, let's say, since you favored him, do you think he'll even play regularly?
I think that inevitably, because of injuries and rest, I think in the regular season he will play regularly.
Let's say everyone's healthy.
Confident. What?
Let's say everyone's healthy.
I think regular season he will get a little bit of burn. I do, eventually. Maybe not right away. Playoff time, when the rotation shrinks a little bit, guys are playing heavier minutes. Probably not, but obviously that depends on the sample size we see in the regular season. So I think he'll get his chance to be a regular playoff contributor off the bench this regular season. And does he take that chance or not? That's what we'll see.
Let me ask you this too. What teams do you think Zubats has potential to be, like, those games where he's going to put up 20 and 10 against? Like, what matchups do you think are great for Zoo? Besides, we mentioned the Suns.
I think the Nuggets are a great one.
Okay, I agree with that.
Because Jokic, like where you can give Jokic problems is with a great screener and a great roller. And I think Zoo can give Jokic a lot of problems offensively, that is. Obviously, Jokic is going to give him back tenfold on the other end because that's what he does.
But at least I'd rather have Zoo guarding him, though, than Rocco or Batum.
I would too. Yeah. And he can use his fouls. Like, he can get as aggressive as any Clipper can on Jokic. So I think a Nuggets-type matchup, I could see him. Let's see. Phoenix I can see as well. him helping quite a bit. Maybe not a 20-10 game, but in terms of numbers, I think it's like Nuggets, maybe the Mavs.
But the only problem with the Mavs is when we just can't give Luka the switch with Zoo because he just stepped back
No,
City
I'm
all
talking.
game
Yeah,
long.
I'm thinking offense right now. I guess
Okay.
we're talking about numbers, but yeah, no, we saw what happened when that happened in Game 2 that we were also at in that Mavs series together at Staples Center.
Zubats is great against has been great against the Mavs offensively before that series, to be honest. Like in the bubble, he played great against them. But
yeah, I'd circle the Nuggets on the schedule. If we're talking about like what team is he going to average at the best numbers against this regular season, I'd probably circle the Nuggets.
you know what other team I think he usually plays decent against is the Lakers because they don't have too many shooters to spread you out, and LeBron isn't as fast as he once was. So I actually think I'm not saying Zubats can guard LeBron, don't get it twisted, but at times when he switches out onto LeBron, he does a good job of not just getting extremely blown by, and he's strong. So LeBron can't just put his shoulder into him. AD, though, he does kind of struggle against when AD's in that mid-range. That's an if, though. If AD's in that mid-range, though, he struggles.
We're about a month and a half away. We'll see.
Hey, but Ash, let them know where they can find you. This was great insight on Diabate. I think you're going to get Clipper fans much more excited about him based on what you said. Obviously, had a very close look at him covering Wisconsin and Wisconsin playing Michigan.
So yeah, no, I watched 80% of his college games this last year, and that was a weird situation as well. I said Moses Brown's situation at UCLA was weird. Moose's year at Michigan was also strange. They were a team that people thought were a national championship contender coming into the year. They struggled a lot. Caleb Houston really struggled for how well I thought he was going to play. They didn't have a great situation at point guard compared to the year before when they made that run with Franz and Isaiah Livers and all those guys. They went to the Elite Eight, lost to the UCLA Bruins, I might add. But yeah, I think Moose is going to be a highlight reel type guy too. Like when he makes plays, there'll be plays that you see on the highlight tape after the game. There'll be plays that get Brian Seaman yelling about something. He'll have to come up with some good puns for Moussa. We'll see what they are come the season. But you can find me on Twitter at ALOW_33. If you come out to a Pepperdine basketball game, if you're an LA local, come on out, watch the Waves. It'll be a lot of fun this year. Got 3 guys that I think are legit prospects on this team. So it's going to be a really fun year down in Malibu. Come watch a game. And you can find me on BadgersWire.com if you're interested in college football, college basketball coverage, Big Ten basketball coverage. Give us a shout there.
Appreciate you, Ash. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. And make sure you guys subscribe to the Locked On Clippers YouTube channel. Appreciate everybody. Go Clippers.